All right, good afternoon and welcome everyone. We appreciate you joining back on with us. We've got another exciting talk for you for the fourth talk in our cloud track. So again, we sincerely appreciate your support and attendance for making this a success in partnership with the Cloud Security Alliance of Tampa Bay. It's my pleasure to introduce Dan. I'm going to try to do it. Thormodsgaard.
Yep, Thormodsgaard.
There we go. Thank you. And
That's okay.
IAM and why it's important in the cloud environments. So as a kind of quick bio, Dan is the CTO and co-founder for FishTech. He's a strategic advisor to Fortune 500 enterprise accounts, technology companies, government institutions. He's focused on long-term cloud transformation, security initiatives, specializes in finding unique solutions to successfully meet corporate security goals and business objectives. So with that, Dan, I want to go ahead and hand it over to you, and we can get started in the talk. I look forward to it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. So today we're going to hello everybody, and good afternoon. Thanks for joining. For those of you that have joined, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here today. The organization that FishTech, we started in 2016, and really we call ourselves Born in the Cloud because we started, obviously fresh from in 2016, and so a lot of the stuff that I'm talk about here today applies to what we went through and how we went through that journey of building our organization and cloud first type of approach. And today we're talking about really identity and access management and how it relates to the cloud adoption. Really, it is a pivotal core component of really a cloud adoption program. We'll talk about what is IAM and why is it important, organizational challenges that we've seen as a consulting agency, our approach that we walk customers through that journey, the IAM pillars and why they're important, how do we develop an overall strategy so that we make sure that we meet business goals and objectives. And obviously governance is foremost importance in terms of meeting compliance objectives, which then drives the architecture. And then I'll walk through a real quick use case. So again, identity and access management, especially in a cloud adoption program, is vital. We no longer can have source IP address and source and destination ports that provide the control framework. Identity is the core component of really of a control in terms of how we get access to data. So it's really a combination of who the user is and what they're authorized to do, in addition to the device that you're coming from. So for example, if it's a managed asset, I would be able to have residual data on that device or be able to take data down to that device. And then I would obviously have access to data, and what types of data do I have access to? So identity is that core component. With obviously with the pandemic, this has become even more vital because we're supporting a lot of work from home users. And in order to allow them to use their home computers, we obviously need to know who the user is, are they authorized, and is the device allowed to be able to download data on that device. Really, some of the challenges that we've seen for organization is really we continue to support both hybrid, so on-premise and cloud-based solutions. And so obviously there's different approaches to how we have to deal with cloud. So for example, in a cloud environment, there's been several discussions earlier on about key management and access and key rotation and all kinds of different aspects. Those are much more important in a cloud architecture, and that is part of an identity. The keys do have access to resources and profiles, like in an IaaS and PaaS environment, and that is important because we want to be able to bulldoze those when they're not used, and oftentimes that's one area that we see that is oftentimes forgotten. Obviously, SaaS, IaaS, and PaaS sprawl. Examples of that would be where we've onboarded applications. The user identity is birthright in the application as opposed to in our identity platform. And so I have these identities sprawled all over IaaS and PaaS. and SaaS environments, to where I have to figure out, where are those identities, what roles do they have, and how do I get better control over that. Privileged versus non-privileged access. Reduce the attack surface. The attack surface is way too large. We need to reduce that down. You've heard, I'm sure you've heard recently about zero trust networking and things of that from that perspective. And obviously that whole initiative is identity based, and obviously we're trying to reduce our attack surface by having a zero trust architecture. Authentication behavior, authentication patterns. We're currently working on an application where we're looking at anomalies of users logging in from 1 minute in the U.S. I'm out of Minneapolis, so Minneapolis, I log in here, and then two minutes later you see me logging in Asia Pac. Obviously, that's a problem, right? And we want to be able to get visibility to that and to be able to take corrective action. Risky behavior. Are we seeing users that are escalating, unusual escalation of privileges, and so on and so forth? Insecure access. We talked about that. We're zero trust networking. We're your typical network type VPN, virtual private networks, and getting rid of those and going to more of a user-based zero trust networking. Account anomaly, lateral movements. These are all areas of concern, and we want to present. Obviously, identity is a core component to obviously taking care of a lot of these issues. In a cloud-based architecture and cloud adoption, it is vital that you have multi-factor authentication, because again, we no longer have that as the boundary and that is the control point of access. We take an approach where, no matter where we're at in an organization and discussion with them, we bring it up to, what is your strategy? What are you trying to get accomplished? What are your goals and objectives around your cloud IAM program and cloud adoption? How does that map to your governance program? So for example, if I'm a heavily regulated entity with PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, we need to take those things into consideration when we're rolling out an overall architecture. That drives the architecture in terms of what should that architecture look like? What are our use cases and our patterns that we're deploying? Validation, to make sure that we do a proof of concept, to make sure that it works effectively, so that we're not missing any items that would cost us downtime or have to go back for asking for budget again. Obviously the implementation, and then the operational piece. This operational piece is probably one of the larger pieces that we're seeing now in terms of deficits and challenges. You think about your privilege access management. Getting talent is difficult, and maintaining the talent is a hard thing to do. So obviously we've got to think about how we're going to operationalize this in order to have an effective program. What are the 4 pillars that we identify as part of an IAM program? Really the identity governance, so provisioning, access certification, does the getting access to applications, does the user have the rights to have that application approval process, etc. And then access management, obviously with a single sign-on, adaptive access, we talked about that, conditional access, reverse proxies, federation. It is vital to federate all of your SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS to an identity provider for obvious reasons, that we want a single point of onboarding and offboarding of users. And then obviously we talked about strong authentication. We must have two-factor authentication so that we can ensure the identity of that user is who they are. Step-up authentication for privilege access in terms of administrators, that they are able to step up and go through a process of approval for that step-up authentication. Password rotation, obviously these are all extremely important items. Vaulting in a cloud architecture, I've heard earlier other folks talking about HashiCorp Vault. Obviously we want that as part of the infrastructure as code process, where we're vaulting these identities. The whole key management lifecycle as well is another discussion topic, but very important. Session recording and check-in and check-out process. So the first thing we do is we identify the stakeholders. We understand exactly what are the use cases and requirements, and our whole goal is to get a good handle on what is the current state of their environment. and then put together an overall program so that we're not missing anything in terms of items that we need to be thinking about. What SaaS applications do you currently have? What is your onboarding process of your applications? Are you ensuring that these applications do have that can be provisioned by an identity provider, which is extremely important. So that way that business units aren't going and just buying applications without going through a process of through the governance program to make sure that we're meeting the necessary requirements. One of the ways that we take control of that, obviously, is through expense management systems, ensuring that organizations are not spinning up AWS, Azure, GCP without going through a approval process, and making sure that we're staying on track with regards to maintaining our governance program. So the overall IAM strategy, really, these are just some examples that we've gone through with other customers. Improve security posture, centralization, consolidation. Think about in a lot of organizations, we have a multitude of different types of IAM tools. We're seeing a tremendous trend to go to a consolidated solution using a single access management and MFA solution. Whereas in the past, in years past, we'd have an MFA solution from one manufacturer, and then we'd have identity provider and Radius and all these other different authentication and authorization platforms. That consolidation is definitely over the past 3 years, we've seen a tremendous consolidation in that direction. And that obviously reduces cost. It reduces our need for support, the ability to effectively operationalize it, and reduce our significant reduction of overhead. The onboarding and offboarding process should be smooth and easy, as opposed to complicated and distributed. The first thing you want to do as part of your governance program is make sure that you're maintaining your compliance objectives. So you may have a NIST program, you may have a SOC 2 Type 2, or a wide variety of different compliance programs, consolidation of that, and map that to a cloud control. A couple of them out there that we've used for our customers has been CSA CCM. That's basically the Cloud Security Alliance Control Framework. NIST CSF those are probably the two most popular, and then the CIS benchmark. And obviously, we're mapping those in our discussion here today. How does that map to your your IAM governance program? And at the end of the day, we're here to, the whole objective here is to protect the data and keep us out of trouble from data leakage and situations that may arise. Business drivers, again, regulatory compliance. The IT to business mapping, this is where obviously the IT sprawl has occurred over the past many years, where it was too arduous and too complicated to go through our IT organization. We essentially went out and built our own cloud infrastructure because we could move at a much faster pace. So today we must meet business objectives, and we must have a good program in place so that we can move at a fast pace, but yet maintain our regulatory compliance and maintain security. Compliance doesn't mean that we're secure. There's obviously other areas that we need to improve to reduce our risk. Cost reduction, real-time provisioning, streamlined consistency, diminished manual process. We'll go through a couple of examples of where obviously, that has reducing that manual process can save a tremendous amount of time for onboarding and offboarding. Productivity, we want our users to be productive. We want the business units to be able to do what they need to do. And then competitive advantage, how do we compete in the industry by reducing complexity and move at a much faster pace. And then obviously the user experience is vital in terms of ensuring that we're providing a consistent user satisfaction. Where do we start? So when we're starting an overall IAM strategy, We look at, what are the current identity governance administration process do they have? Oftentimes, organizations are doing manual reporting. We had one organization that basically they would go through an audit, and they had 4 or 5 people that were going through the audit. And as part of going through the audit, it would take them essentially each quarter. By the time they finished the audit, we would be able to start the next one. So essentially 4 to 5 people consistently just going through audit, looking at user privilege access management, auditing user activity, user permissions, etc. We can automate that. So how do we reduce that overhead and maintain our compliance? Access management has been a key. Identity access management right now is extremely very hot topic, and a lot of activity. Our IAM team is the busiest it's ever been over the past 5 years. We're out, deployment of SSO, federation to SaaS application, IaaS and PaaS, and obviously making things, working towards a consolidation of a single platform for identity and access, for access management. Privileged access management, obviously with a cloud environment and a on-premise environment, we're typically looking at different scenarios and different tools, but clearly, and different process, et cetera. And so we need to look at each use case and requirements. Physical authentication, we're now seeing where this physical, in the years past, we didn't have that single platform that would tie into physical authentication. They were often by separate budgets. The facility folks oftentimes own the physical access authentication piece. We're now starting to see that consolidate together. We need to look at user behavior. What are there anomalies that are occurring as part of a user behavior detection? Were they getting access to something physically that they shouldn't get access to? And we start seeing a pattern that they start accessing other systems and taking advantage of access that they shouldn't be. And we can map that into a pattern of behavior and increase our, start taking action. So what do we look at for key features and capability? Account provisioning. How do we make it smooth? Where are the birthrights of users? Oftentimes those are in HR systems where they are, the user identity is birthright in that HR system. And then how do we push that identity out to the various different platforms that we have for access management and also for role-based? What application should they have access to? Periodic reviews of role mining, as part of a compliance objectives to make sure that we're going through our continuous auditing lifecycle and reducing that overhead. Segregation of duties, high risk and mitigation controls, and privilege access users, and then password reset policies. That's usually your IGA tool is providing those services. From a PAM perspective, obviously managing wide privilege access, escalation of privileges, secrets management, and vaulting, and auditing, reporting of those systems, and then encryption, ensuring that we have encryption for those areas that we have privileged, confidential information. And access management in terms of data sync options, access control methods, encryption methods, cloud hosts, on-prem. Again, we've seen a lot of these access management tools that are focused not only on in a hybrid environment. They can solve the problem from a cloud, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS perspective, but they also are addressing things such as radius authentication for typical network type systems and conventional legacy VPNs. An example, I'll use ourselves as an example. We have an HR system that, at first it wasn't the most friendly API tool, but we're currently using an IGA tool to use our SAP HR system to birthright those identities. Work through a fully automated process of getting those users into Active Directory, and then Active Directory to our access management solution. And then from the access management solution, we then provision those users based on roles, with an IGA tool to what they can, what applications they can access and what authorization they have within the applications itself. So that we've been able to take a what used to be a very manual process where our HR people would put the identities in the HR system, and then we'd have to go to the IT, and the IT would have to go in and create the identities in Active Directory, and those Active Directory would get pushed out to these various different applications based on their role. We've been able to automate that and reduce our onboarding and offboarding significantly by automating this entire process. I don't know, so the big hot item today is really a SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. And an example of this with I have one customer, a healthcare provider, that went from 75 work from home users to 150,000 work from home users approximately a year ago. And as part of that, we obviously had to change the way that they're getting access to their systems and their data centers and their cloud applications. And the way that we're doing that we've seen a significant increase in these tools of Secure Access Service Edge solutions, which are providing the security, basically the security stack, such as CASB, Next Generation Firewall, SWG, private access, etc. All based with access based on identity. So depending upon who you are, can you access a system internal within your corporate infrastructure, or can you access an application, etc., etc. This has really changed. This is a game changer in our industry, and we're starting to see a significant activity in this whole Secure Access Service Edge, pushing that into a microservices platform and into a cloud architecture, since most of everyone is working from home at the moment, and we're accessing systems from home. So going through those microservice architecture has reduced the overhead. We saw a kind of a shift going from initially to kind of a workspace environment where they would, most of your CSPs, AWS, Azure, and GCP all provided some sort of a workspace. But, from that perspective, most of the applications are all web-based applications. It doesn't make sense to spin up a workspace specifically just for a web app. We can achieve the same security controls and access controls using using a SASE type architecture. So when we go through an integration process, the first thing we typically do is looking at provision, govern, and review, authorize, authenticate, federate, and high-risk user service accounts through privileged access management. And going through each one of the applications and looking at the use cases and patterns and what do we need to do from a deployment perspective. And each one of these, when we're engaged in a customer IAM program, we're going through that process of identifying each one of these use cases, and then look at low-hanging fruit of where can we get success at a much faster, where can we gain some easy wins. So on a use case, we had a large organization that essentially went from a homegrown SAML solution and wanted to consolidate down into a single platform using a commercial access management solution, an MFA. As part of that, we reviewed their existing applications. They were roughly about 150,000 users, and I want to say roughly about 800 applications, roughly, somewhere in the neighborhood of that. Some customer facing, some internal facing. And as part of that process, we identified an overall strategy and program on how to migrate off of this existing system, the existing homegrown SAML solution, onto a commercial-based SAML solution. The benefits that they would receive, obviously, by doing this would be reduced administrative overhead, single solution for access management and MFA. They had reduced their time to market and user experience, increased their user experience significantly. Where we started off was we identified some smaller applications that we could basically federate those SaaS applications over to this new platform. And start working at some low-hanging fruit wins. And then we had to move over to, it's one of the things when you're moving over to an access management system, it's when you federate the application, it's flip the switch. So you have to have all your ducks in order. The biggest one was obviously the Office 365 environment, where we were taking roughly about 50,000 users and moving them over to a flip the switch scenario with the Office 365. Fortunately, it went very, very well. No issues. Some minor issues in terms of just user getting access and getting their MFA solution up and running. But essentially, that is in any event. Then now we're moving over to their customer identity and access management, their external facing applications, and working through that process. And with that, we can take any questions you have. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, cool.
So I didn't see any questions posted in the QA, but now is the time. If anybody had any questions related to any of the benefits of this, or questions about what it could do, like I saw, it was pretty astounding that you didn't run into any major hurdles trying to migrate those 50,000 users. That's quite the accomplishment.
Yeah, and that's a lot of planning. So you really work through your scripting and your cutover scenarios with you have to have you're going to run into some certain circumstances that are going to cause you some pain, but you can clearly achieve that by having things in order, help desk ready to go when they their MFA on their phone for whatever reason didn't go as planned. But at the end of the day, we really didn't have much of any problem, and that goes to the technology itself, and the capabilities within technology have come a long ways in terms of ease of use and which helps our deployment mechanism, a deployment strategy. Yeah, it's actually not entirely uncommon for it to go extremely well, which is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely a good thing, and I can painfully understand having to deal with audits and then getting ready for the next audit as soon as you finish another. So
yes, yeah,
if you can automate, then definitely can save quite a bit of time and frustration, and of course money too.
Yeah, in that situation, we essentially reduced the 5-person audit, and obviously taking each quarter to complete the audit, the full quarter, actually to a week and to 2 people. And so yeah, well, yes, you're paying for the tool itself to help you through the identity and your IGA tool to help you with that, but the automation and the simplicity that you get out of it is significant. So the time invested. Now those typical projects can be 6 months to a year. We've had a couple of situations, larger organizations, that it takes a length of time to get that deployed. But you can take the idea here is to take low-hanging fruit areas of where you can get some quick wins and then start working on other areas of expansion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a microwave solution for that, especially because I see audits getting very in-depth lately, and kind of having to modify their strategy and increase the amount of depth that they've been asking on certain questions regarding your solutions, regarding how you're managing your assets, how you're managing your access. Been a lot of good questions asked by them that's uncovered some concerns that that's why we're auditing.
Precisely, yeah. And then obviously your third-party audits from your third parties, which are significant in addition to that as well, right? I mean, you have contracts, organizations that have contracts, such as ourselves. We have many clients out there that we have to adhere to their third-party assessments. And so we can automate. The more we can automate that, the more we simplify it. When they're asking for these types of situations, we have a program in place that identifies these areas. We have everything documented, and then we can show them the results of the audit in a very simple way without having to go through a manual process. Reduces time significantly.
Oh yeah, time is money.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I know I got a little earlier, so I got done a little earlier, so I hope it, yeah, I didn't see any questions either, so.
All right, so I guess last call for questions if anybody's got anything else. Otherwise, I can close this out. I see Karen's jumped on, unless you had anything to add to Karen.
No, I just say thank you, Dan, for participating. I think that this is a very important topic that a lot of people are moving or are already in the cloud. So having a strong identity program is key. So great presentation. I think probably gave a lot of people some things to think about. So again, thank you so much for your time on a Saturday afternoon. I just wanted to take a minute to call out the appreciation. That's all.
My pleasure.
That I have.
Thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Yep. All right, Chris, I'm handing it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Again, thank you so much, Dan.